On your Monday episode of Locked On Raptors, after a weekend home-and-home sweep at the hands of the Orlando Magic, your Toronto Raptors are now 22 games below 500. They are not very good. We know this, but do we also know some more stuff about Gary Trent Jr. and perhaps Immanuel Quickley and what he's got to work on in the summer? We'll get into those takeaways from this weekend and much more coming up on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, March the 18th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Bad website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, a great place to come hang out, talk about the Toronto Raptors, of course, but March Madness, we've got a listener bracket starting up. You want to be part of that, you can come and join us in the Discord as well. And, talking about Dune 2. Oh my God, Dune 2. Incredible stuff. Go check out the Discord. Link is in the description. As always, it's free to join. Would love to see you in there in our little listener community we got building around the show. And right now it's more like support group than anything else. So come hang out. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts on the audio app of your choosing. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Always appreciated when you go ahead and do that. Plus, we are on YouTube. You can go subscribe to the Locked On Raptors YouTube channel, hit the little notification bell, and you will get a heads up via push notification every single time the show is about to premiere or go live. And that is a wonderful thing. So you never miss a second of the hot, sweet action here on the podcast as we talk about a not very good basketball team. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And we will get rolling here by bringing in our pal Vivek Jacob from Sportsnet, from Raptors in 7, his Substack newsletter, from Cricket Canada, and from watching lots of sports at home over the weekend. It is the sportsman himself, Big V, Vivek Jacob. What's going on, pal?
The sportsman was sported out this weekend. I mean, geez, I was watching the WPL final. There was the Indian Wells Open that was on, so plenty of tennis going on. You had some great basketball games. Kyrie Irving hitting a ridiculous 18-foot left-handed floater over Nikola Jokic while he's fasting during Ramadan. Just insane. So by the time it came, then Man United beat Liverpool in the FA Cup, insane 4-3 win. And by the end of all that, I was so sported out that
sport comma D out. Yeah. There you go.
That I was left watching the Raptors Magic game this morning before we pod.
Look, man, I think any way you can sort of condense the amount of time it takes to consume a Toronto Raptors basketball game these days is a smart thing. I am very thankful for the NBA League Pass all possessions feeds of these games where 35 to 40 minutes, you get all the action in. It's a pretty decent way to take in these games where, look, man, not a whole lot is happening on the team level to generate much excitement or intrigue. However, there are individual performances, as we talked about lately, that are kind of the thing to keep track of. We're going to talk on this show about Immanuel Quickley, who had himself a bit of a step back after many, many steps forward of late against the Magic, a very long and nasty defensive team that gave him some trouble. We'll talk about that. We've got the good, the bad, and the coming up later on. But I want to start here, Big V, and it's Gary Trent Jr., who I think is probably the story of this weekend for the Raptors. Friday in the loss against the Magic, 113-103, where, the Raptors in both of these games kind of hung close for a while before just not having the juice offensively to stick with the Magic, who themselves are no great shakes on offense, but man, oh man, can they put the clamps on you defensively. Very similar scripts here. But Gary Trent Jr. in both games, very good in different ways. On Friday, it was a classic Gary Trent Jr. game. 31 points, 4 boards, no assists, classic GTJ stuff. 10-17 from the field, 7-10 from downtown. And then on Sunday, a little bit more of a well-balanced game, a pretty decent defensive effort from him. 15 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals, a block, 6-12 shooting, 2 of 6 from downtown for Trent. And look, one of these storylines of the back part of the season here was sort of teed up by Bobby Webster after the trade deadline, where he talked about Gary Trent Jr. and very pointedly said, we're not really sure with Gary yet. He's very much TBD, which is a strange and interesting way to hear a front office talk about a player out on Maine. We don't hear that often. And it's been something I've been keeping tabs on down the stretch here. Gary Trent Jr. had himself a couple of good games here, Big V. Does this stretch of games he's played over the last, month and a half here since the deadline, has it changed your feeling on him whatsoever? What I'm asking is, for you, is GTJ still TBD?
I think for me, the main thing is we know what he is as a player. And when we look at his 3-point shooting, obviously that's an asset to this team. When you look at him at his best as a defender, he's someone who can apply ball pressure and get you some steals. Beyond that, he is a pretty one-dimensional player. He can, lose focus on the defensive end and, get beat on back cuts and just not be in tune with the defensive schemes. And so overall, I think that's why Bobby Webster says something like, hey, we're kind of, TBD. So I think for me going forward, obviously with his age and his 3-point shooting, he is someone that fits in. And, strangely enough, he is someone that is also looked upon to provide some leadership on this team, in the absence of Jakob Poeltl and Scotty Barnes. And so I think there is value there. The Raptors, I think if there was, a median value, they probably would have looked to trade him at the deadline, but they couldn't find that. And so I think that's where they will probably evaluate and say, okay, is this money just better off being spent elsewhere? I probably lean towards that way as well.
Sure.
But I think he's young enough where he can still be a net neutral asset.
Yeah.
And so I don't think, you would end up in an overpay situation if you were to get him to come back. And so in that sense, it's not like, you're doing a bad thing in bringing him back.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think the shooting is the reason you bring him back, right? Like, you can never have enough 3-point shooting. And we've seen that Gary Trent Jr. playing off of Scotty Barnes, playing off of Jakob Poeltl, is like a pretty effective player, like a good, trigger man, play finisher, fifth option, where if things funnel towards him at the end of a clock, you feel pretty okay that he's going to get something up, whether it's one of his sort of jab step mid-rangers, whether it's just a quick catch and shoot three. We know what Gary Trent Jr. is. Gary Trent Jr. is at this point. And Gary Trent Jr.? Weird. But yeah, it comes down to how valuable do you think his singular skill, I guess 1.5 skills, if the steals on defense count as a skill. I think sometimes they actually are a detriment to the team because he gets out of position and all that stuff. But how important is that one skill to you, and how replaceable do you think that skill is, whether by, scaling up Grady Dick's usage next season, or drafting someone else coming up who has some 3-point juice, or finding someone on the margins. A guy I think about a lot is Malik Beasley, who signed for the minimum with the Bucks. Is a guy like Malik Beasley, who is kind of a Gary Trent Jr.-ish type player, where it's just 3-point volume, 3-point volume, 3-point volume, and that's what he's there for. Like, is that kind of guy available for a minimum, a biannual exception, something like that? Like, it might be out there. It's tough. Like, you're seeing him also play right now, Big V, in this context where he's not in the position to be his best. He's had some moments. Obviously, that Friday game going off for 31, a season high, is fantastic. But like I mentioned, playing with Scotty and Yak, like, that's where he's going to be at his best. That's where his value is going to be most revealed. And we're not even getting to see that down the stretch here. So that kind of muddies the decision-making as well, I would think.
Yeah, but I think, that's a good segue, because I think in evaluating Gary Trent Jr.'s status with the team moving forward, if we're saying, okay, he's going to be at his best with Scotty and Yak, that he is at his best when he's in the starting lineup, the downside is he has not proven to be a good bench player.
Right.
And so when you look at that starting lineup, and I've said this before, where you have Scotty and Quickley and RJ and Yak, ideally you want that other guy to be a really good perimeter defender. And Gary Trent Jr. is not that, right? And so if you're saying he doesn't fit that ideal prototype of what you'd want in the starting lineup next to those guys, and he's not very productive off the bench. Now, here in March, obviously in this starting role, he's averaging 20 points a game. He's shooting 38% from three, um, having a really good month. But in terms of evaluating that and just being very real about it, it's hard to see the fit, right?
Yeah. Although I guess the counterpoint is right now he's kind of playing with lineups that resemble bench lineups. It's like all reserve level players,
And that's
and
the
he's looking all
frustration,
right.
right?
Yeah.
It's like when he's been kind of been told that, hey, your role is going to be a bench guy, we've generally just seen him struggle. Like he has never been anywhere near as effective as a bench guy as he has when he's been in the starting lineup.
It's true, but think about the benches the Raptors have had for the last couple of seasons. They've been like hot garbage. And I do think like playing with a Kelly Olynyk, playing with a Grady Dick, playing with, Immanuel Quickley or Scotty Barnes sprinkled in as a staggered starter. I guess I'm not of the mind that Gary Trent Jr. can't be good in a bench lineup. I think it depends entirely on who he's playing with. And are there people there to set the table for him, make it so he's not like a second or third creative option? Because that's just not his bag. But if he's playing in lineups that have a little bit more creation than they've had in recent years, where it's been Gary Trent Jr. and Precious Achua and Chris Boucher and on down the line, I do wonder if there is like a more sort of potent version of Gary Trent Jr. off the bench that we just haven't seen him for enough time play with, because they've not had good bench players up until the last month or so. So
It's possible. Yeah, that's the argument, right? And again, he's young enough where you're willing to ask the question, right?
Yeah. Still TBD, I think, is our roundabout way of trying to figure this one out. I don't know. And frankly, it's not like the highest of stakes questions for the Raptors, right? Like if he walks, it's not the end of the world. That they stay, it's not the end of the world. But we'll see. I think it's a pretty interesting one, and a guy who, nice to see him have a big weekend. We'll see if he can parlay that into more, because it's not been overly impressive or anything like that during this run where he has been far higher up in the hierarchy for this team. We'll come back on the other side. We'll talk about Immanuel Quickley, who had himself a bit of a rough weekend. Like I said, lots of steps forward of late, a couple steps back over the weekend. We'll dig into whether there are any red flags about Quickley's performance against the Magic in 2 losses. We'll get to that coming up in just 1 sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That is huge. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing a lot of hats. You're spread very thin. You might not have the time or resources to hire. I've been a hiring manager in my time in previous jobs, and it's hard. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy, and it just sucks all of your resources out of doing the things you have to do to keep your business afloat. So right now, go post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedInNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedInNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we continue on here with your first listen of the day. Big V, Vivek Jacob is here as we take down a 2-0 or 0-2 Raptors weekend sweep at the hands of the Orlando Magic, who are pretty good and very nasty defensively, as one Immanuel Quickley found out this weekend. It's been a really good run of Quickley. We've had like 5-6 shows in a row before today where Quickley's been like the one thing that we've gotten to glow about, and it's been a thrill. Bit of a step back over the weekend. 10 points, 10 assists on 3 of 9 shooting, just 1 of 3 from deep on Friday in the 113-103 loss. And then last night, 111-96 loss to the Magic. Quickley goes for 12 points, 7 boards, 5 assists, 4 of 15 from the field, 0 of 6 from deep. A weirdly off night from him. You probably don't look too much into the 3-point shooting there just because he's been amazing from deep for his entire time as a Raptor, but certainly not something you want to see, and something the Magic surely had something to do with, because they are very nasty to play against on the offensive end with the way that they just throw length and Jalen Suggs at you. It's unpleasant. It's very, very unpleasant. So yeah, thoughts on Quickley. Not a great weekend for him. Anything here like a particularly concerning red flag for you from this, or is this a product of guy who's the cleared number one option on this team without a very good number two to work with, getting honed in on by an excellent defense? And sometimes the Magic are just going to do this to you and other good guards around the league.
I don't think there's any red flags. I just say, obviously with Scotty and Yak, that would make a world of difference in terms of what he's seeing. But I do think, in terms of his development and something to work on moving forward is just in general going up against size. And
Sure.
I think, when the Raptors played the Warriors in that game where Scotty got hurt, he was going up against Moses Moody, who is 6'5" and has a 7-foot wingspan and caused him a heap of trouble. Then right after that, there was the game against the Pelicans where they put Herb Jones on him. And obviously that's a nightmare matchup for anyone. And having that size against him caused problems as well. And so now again, you go up against a big Magic team. Jalen Suggs is 6'5", obviously a really strong guy. And so I think that sort of prototype, if teams can throw that at him, depending on what the other matchups are, they will do that. And so I think that's something that he will need to work on moving forward, and sort of just watch some film and understand, where his spots are and what he can attack. And I think that is what I would kind of take away from this mini series against the Magic, and just say, hey, we've got some film of you going up against size here. And let's see what the takeaways can be. And, I thought if you were to look at maybe Suggs and Moody as comparables, maybe they're more comparable than, a Herb Jones. I'd probably say that their ability to really dig into quickly and disturb the handle while also, being quick enough to stay in front. I think that combination is just very difficult to go up against. And so it's probably a situation where you might want to, get him more opportunities, on the run, on the catch. And that's where, getting Scotty involved, getting Yak involved, that's where it can be really helpful.
For sure. If you're just running straight pick and roll with Immanuel Quickley up against these really good defenses, it's going to be hard to get him in, spots where he can succeed, right? Because you're either getting downhill with a Suggs or a Moody or whoever it's going to be. Suggs a lot in obviously these games. Markelle Fultz a little bit here and there, like right on his hip. It's physical, it's mean, it's nasty. Or you're having him go up against a big who's hulking at the rim, and that's just not been an area where he's been fantastic. And look, this is the challenge that faces every guard under 6'3" in the NBA in 2024. Teams are massive. Teams have multiple guys to throw on guards who are slippery, who can stick around and sort of hang with smaller players despite being on the bigger end of the size spectrum. And this is like every good guard needs to figure out how to handle this, how to work around it. And it's why I don't think, a guy like Quickley is necessarily like a number one option on a very good team, because it's just like, it's hard unless you're Steph Curry. It's hard to be a lead guard and just have the ability to overcome size when you're running into it at all corners. Right. And so I do think, to your point, like if Scotty and Yak were here, okay, then you can kind of work them as like a more jitterbug style off-ball player, right? You run split actions and stuff like that to get him sprung open for open threes, and that is the way he can affect the game. And that's the beauty of Immanuel Quickley, is he can kind of do all of that, right? But yeah, in this specific matchup with this, level of talent working around him, really tough stuff. And it's a pretty good example of, hey, like, the playoffs boil down, you get into really tough, high leverage games. This is what you're going to be up against. And these are all valuable learning experiences for a guy who I think will handle it just fine. He's been making really great strides of late as an interior scorer, around 50% from 2-point range over the last, 12, 13 games, whatever it's been since the All-Star break now. Comes down a little bit with these games against the Magic, but not by much. He's 4 of 9 from 2 last night. He's 2 of 6 from 2, which is not great, I suppose. In that, 3 of 6? No, 4. Wait, I'm reading numbers. 2 of 6 in the Friday game. So not amazing or anything like that, but not like a gross, disgusting performance or anything like that either. But yeah, like size is the challenge that every guard needs to figure out their counters to in the modern NBA. And it does get a lot easier when you have also size on your side working and drawing attention away, because that certainly is not happening right now with the guys who are out of the lineup. Obviously, RJ Barrett not available for these games either. And, only best thoughts to the Barrett family, as we know what's going on there with his younger brother passing. We don't need to belabor that point. It's really, really sad and terrible. And best wishes with RJ as he deals with that and the family deals with that. But that feels like a place to leave it. I don't know how you pivot out of that, but we'll come back on the other side and we'll round out the show and take a look at our good, bad, and from the weekend that was in Toronto Raptors basketball, which was a whole lot of losing to the Orlando Magic. We'll get to that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by Stitch Fix. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good? That's what I get with Stitch Fix. You got to go try Stitch Fix, because right now with Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget. They do all the shopping for you, and it's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. All you got to do is give your stylist your size, style, and budget preferences, and you can order boxes how and when you want. No subscription required as well. They'll send you 5 just for you pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. Keep what works, send back the rest. It's that simple. Your stylist always sends just the right pieces, and the fit is going to be on point. It's why they have Style ESP. Don't know how they do it, but you got to go and check them out right now. If you don't love something, you just send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/lockedon. stitchfix.com/lockedon. Rounded out the show here with Vivek Jacob, Big V, our pal, as we dissect and talk about what we can from your depleted, busted, 7-game losing in a row Toronto Raptors, falling twice to the Orlando Magic, who are quite good, and it's very annoying. Let's get to it. It's the good, the bad, and the way we round out every single episode of the podcast here. A thing we like, thing we didn't like, and a thing that has us a bit intrigued from the weekend that was in Toronto Raptors basketball. We'll start with the good. What you got for your good, Big V?
I am going to go with Jordan Nwora for I thought he was incredible in the third quarter offensively. I think we know that he can't defend a lick and really struggles on that. But, you're looking for silver linings in all of these games. And I thought in the third quarter, it was just really fun to watch him cook. And I think, his ability to get his shot off and, when he's feeling it, he is a very confident player, at least on that one side of the floor. I will give him my good. Who you got?
So yeah, War is a good pick. It's nice that we have now 2 games to be like, oh, remember that game where Jordan Nwora got real hot instead of just the one Hawks game. So that's fun. My good, this might be controversial. Bruce Brown kind of settling in all right since coming back from injury. Pop quiz for you, Big V. What is Bruce Brown shooting at the rim as a Toronto Raptor?
At the rim?
At the rim.
I'm going to say 64%.
He is shooting 75% at the rim as a Toronto Raptor, which kind of shocked me when I looked it up, but that is in the 92nd percentile of all players per clean the glass. That's pretty rad. Also, 75% of his shots are coming either at the rim or from short mid-range, which is real rim pressure that this team needs, especially in its sort of dire state that it currently is in. Obviously he's been kind of bricky from short mid-range as a Raptor, just 24% from that range, which is a stark drop off from the 75% at the rim. So, there's some noise in terms of the location of those shots and all that, but that's also a massive outlier number for him from short mid-range. He's been far better than that for most of his career. So I think it, is probably not all that indicative of what's to come for Bruce Brown. Look, he's not amazing. He's obviously going to be better with teams that are sort of on the contender level, where he's the sort of additive eighth piece and not someone you're counting on to sort of raise your floor. But since coming back from injury, 13.5 points, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists on 50, 40, 90 shooting. You could do a lot worse. Bruce Brown, he's my good, and you're just going to have to deal with it, Bruce Brown haters. What you got for your bad in this one?
I thought Kelly Olynyk struggled in this one. I think defensively he was struggling to cope with the matchups, and obviously some of that has to do with just how much the Raptors are giving up on the perimeter. And you look at the matchups, Gary Trent Jr. going up against Franz Wagner. That's not an ideal matchup. You've got ideally you would have Ochai Agbaji on Wagner at least, but you don't want to put Gary on Banchero. So now Ochai is defending Banchero, and I thought he did okay, but Banchero just had a great game. So yeah, and then you had Grady in the starting lineup as well. So I think there's a lot that's already compromised, but I think Kelly really struggled in the screening actions in this one. The Magic definitely, consistently looked to pick at that, whether it was getting Gary involved with Kelly in those actions, and then they were absolutely feasting, or even Grady. And so I thought it was a tough one for him. You could see even at, I think it was the end of the first half, where Darko even went kind of offense, defense, and brought Jonte in. And I thought, Jonte was more serviceable on the defensive end in this one. And so, yeah, I think, obviously Kelly's important as an offensive hub and what he gives you in that regard. But defensively, this was really tough for him. So he's my bad for this game.
Yeah, look, Kelly is overextended as a starting center. I don't think that's telling tales out of school. I think, he'll be far better off insulated against second units once Jakob Poeltl's available, hopefully to the beginning next season. But yeah, if you're counting on Kelly Olynyk to be your defensive anchor, and, it's not going to go super well. Obviously, the rebounding's been an issue for him as well. That said, he's done lots of nice stuff to grease the wheels on the offensive end as well. Although my bad is about how they were not able to grease the wheels at all over the course of these two games. In particular, Friday night against Orlando, 71.8 half-court offensive rating for your Toronto Raptors. That is right out of the beginning of this season, when the Raptors were flirting with some of the worst half-court offense in the entire NBA. Really nasty stuff. And it's a bummer, because that was the game where they got themselves out and running more than any team in the entire NBA this season. A 28.6 transition frequency for the Raptors on Friday against the Magic. Normally you run on, almost a third of your possessions and you're going to have some success, but the half-court offense was so out of any sort of chance to score against that Magic team that it did not buoy them nearly enough to hang in and win that game. So wasting a killer transition game with one of your worst half-court offensive games. And I do think sort of a bonus bad here, Immanuel Quickley just getting 9 threes up over the course of these two games. Not what you want to see, of course. We've seen it. There's a very clear, direct correlation between Quickley taking lots of threes and Quickley looking as good as he has as a Raptor. And so, yeah, I think you getting run off the line by the Magic and sort of forced to go to work among the trees. Very good schooling and scouting and defense on the Magic side of things, obviously, but needs some more Quickley volume from deep, even if he's just taking them and not making them at a great rate. Just taking them is a huge thing for this team. So, not so great on that front. What's your from this weekend?
This is looking through the keyhole. I thought Jahmi'us Ramsey had a few nice passes, and I was kind of intrigued by that. And
another dunk,
another dunk that really popped. And so I think so far, you take away the athleticism instantly, but you're seeing a bit of a basketball player in there. I think he showed a bit of his passing. He's got some decent instincts, so intrigued by that a little, and we'll see what that looks like as we inevitably watch more garbage time with this team.
It's all garbage time now, man. It's all garbage time. My is sort of looking at the Magic as a bit of an aspirational team for next year's Toronto Raptors. Obviously, very different team builds. It's funny. They were like identical team builds, and then the Raptors traded away all their large forwards, and now they're very, very different team builds. However, I think what the Magic have done this year, look, they're not probably going to do anything all that serious in the playoffs. They have the 24th ranked offense in the NBA. That is not going to be good enough to get by in the postseason, as good as their defense is. And they're number 4. They're very nasty on that end, as I've said. But, is there an avenue for the Raptors to make that sort of leap from obvious, not very good 12th seed team to, all of a sudden, like, okay, maybe they get into the top 6. They're probably more of a play-in sort of team on true talent alone. But is there a jump there for them, and sort of what needs to happen for that to be a reality for the Raptors? I think that's kind of a fascinating thing. Do you at all look at the Magic as some sort of aspirational team? Obviously, again, so very different team builds now, but do you think there is a jump of that sort of degree in the Raptors next season if things line up very, very well for them?
Yeah, I mean, I struggle to use the word jump with the Orlando Magic because this is the first time that they've won the season series against the Raptors since 2011-12, which is also the last time, that they kind of had anything going. Like, they made the playoffs in 2019. But this has kind of been a long rebuild for them that they've finally hit on, right?
Sure.
And so if you want the Raptors to jump to where they are now, I think it would take getting quite a bit right during the offseason. I think offensively, the Raptors will be fun to watch when healthy. And hopefully they'll all be, the key guys will all be healthy to start next season. But I do have defensive concerns. And so I think that's where the roster building, how that kind of shakes out is going to have a lot to say in terms of the ceiling of this team. Obviously, the Magic are an excellent defensive team. And, when these two teams match up, like, the size difference across the board is just glaring, right? And so how do the Raptors address that on the wing? I think that's something that will have a big say in whether or not they're able to make a huge leap next season. And so, perimeter defense has to improve for next season. And largely a lot is going to have to change on the defensive end for me to believe that they can, really make a leap and get into that conversation.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think their offense has a chance, like at full steam, at full health next season, to flirt with top 10, just because of, the sort of the fit of the skill sets, the finishing of an RJ Barrett, the Quickley Barnes dynamic, Pirtle as a high efficiency role man, all that stuff. The 3-point shooting being just better across the board. And frankly, the system being very conducive to productive offense. But yeah, the defense is going to have to take massive, massive strides. And I think if the Raptors are to make a jump into the sort of, 6, 7, 8 mishmash of teams, it probably comes via a similar formula as like last year's Kings, where they were just so good on offense and sort of surprisingly so that it helped balance out a not very good defense. Their defense is just not good enough on the Raptors end right now. And, we'll see. Maybe there are defensive strides made by guys on the team. Maybe getting Scotty and Yak back really does help set a basis, which, hey, like, there was a stretch there when those guys were healthy where they were kind of batting at like middle of the league defense for a couple of weeks there. Again, tiny sample, but we have to go on tiny samples because this entire season is just little tiny micro samples all put together. So we got to roll with what we can find here and sort of sift through. But like, they're going to have to take a pretty substantial step forward on defense to be that kind of team next year. I don't think it's impossible, though. I think it's very much on the table, especially if they get this summer right and kind of bring in some wing size and stuff like that, which, hey, they have the wherewithal to do with picks, with cap space, with the resources they have at their disposal. So we'll see. But yeah, just the Magic are an interesting one. They're kind of it'd be nice to follow that route if you're the Toronto Raptors next season. No doubt. We will leave it there. Big V, thanks so much for hanging out, buddy. Anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Usual stuff, doing general NBA content for Sportsnet, doing my Raptors Substack, Raptors in 7. My last post was in appreciation of Chris Boucher, and kind of, he's potentially played his last game as a Raptor. So we'll see how that plays out. So just wanted to show him some love. And so you can go check out that at Raptors in 7. The Substack is pinned to my Twitter profile, so you can follow me on Twitter at Vivek Jacob and check it out. And besides that, I've got cricket stuff going with Cricket Canada.
Awesome. Everyone go check it out. Big V's, great work. You can, of course, find me at Woodley Sean. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend on the YouTube channel and on the various podcast apps of your choice. It's always appreciated when you support the show that way. Again, the Discord, free to join, link in the description. Come join us. We got the March Madness men's and women's brackets challenges going on right now, so you can join those, take part, make your picks, all that jazz. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow as we hopefully start to dive into some draft stuff. Because look, man, these games ain't going anywhere. These games are not telling us much. And so we're going to, with March Madness coming up this week, take an eye towards the draft, start looking at some prospects who you should maybe keep an eye on during this tournament. And hopefully we hit some guests on for that. If not, I'll go some solo stuff, do some video work, and get my scouting, season into higher gear and all that good stuff. So that's to look forward to tomorrow. Got more games to talk about this week, of course, and all of that good stuff. But in the meantime, thank you so much for hanging out. We'll talk to you again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye.